No? Call the meeting to order. You approve the agenda. A motion,
Can I make a motion to approve the agenda as presented?
any discussion? All those in favor? Say aye.
Aye.
Carries. Public comment, is it for public comment or just to listen in? I mean, official public comment.
It's part of our shindig. He's with us.
Oh, okay.
He just wants to say that to you.
He didn't want to see it there. I get it.
I'll sit back.
Yeah, okay. Well, and I guess that solves that. So we'll move on to project kickoff meeting in North Road. I think that we wanted to get this out of the way before you guys started. You know, we're essentially good to go. We understand that, but they're just, we have heard some concerns about the cost of the project, and we understand, you know, to a certain extent, it is what it is. But we, given the volatile times and the amount of money that we're talking about here, we wanted to be sure that we were all on the same page in terms of, you know, taking advantage of any opportunities if there's a chance to reduce the public cost and not, you know, not severely impact the project, that we would love to be on the lookout for those. You know, if it's a matter of a trade-off, you know, if you think of something, John, as you review the plans, or, you know, Chris, Ted, Nick, you guys are looking at it and like, you know, as we're going to do this, we realize, you know, instead of A, we could do B for, you know, 85% of the efficiency, but there's also savings. That's the kind of thing we'd like to be able to take advantage of. But capture it. Well, that's John Harrington.
John Harrington.
Okay, the engineer. But that's just my take, Larry or Stu.
Yeah, I think that's well put, you know, we had a number of the townspeople that think this project is a lot more than we expected for the 2.1 miles, and working together, you know, collectively, if we could have some savings without sacrificing the project in any way, we certainly would like to have the opportunity to participate in that for the town's sake. You know, you guys know what you have to do, what's to be done, but sometimes when you're on the job, doing the job, you can see something and say, hey, I think we could do this just a little bit different and come up with the same result. And with the cost savings, and that's the kind of thing that this select board and the townspeople would like to do. And I know you guys have done projects in the past, and you strike this once in a while. Sometimes you find that what seems to be on paper the best way of doing something, but when you get in the actual using of the project and doing it, that maybe there's something you could do better. Maybe there's something that will turn up that costs a little bit more than what you expect too. I mean, it goes both ways. But that's kind of what the meeting is all about here. We would just like to be transparent on what the town and the select board feels like, and we'd like to work with you as much as possible.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's opportunity within the contract itself to contain costs, you know, with the drainage, the under drain. We were, you know, I felt like we were pretty conservative on the estimate of the length of the under drain. We have notes in the plan that, you know, we're supposed to meet and stake it out, exact locations of under drain. That's all paid for by the foot. That's just one example. You know, we may get out there and find that there's ledge, you know, certain locations, you can't do under drain anyway, or it doesn't make sense because of, you know, the soils are really super well drained in a certain location or whatever. There's also ditching and under drain, drive culverts, I'm sorry, that, you know, we can review in the field too and stake them out.
When we did this project 20 years ago, roughly, we put in a bunch of new culverts then. Are you gonna take all those out and start over? Is that the situation?
Under the road?
Yeah, under the road. We put a bunch, we spent 750,000 about 20 years ago on that 2.1 miles.
I mean, all the culverts that we looked at, there's 16 or so. Are in poor
Bad shape?
condition,
Okay,
yeah.
all right,
Yeah,
I'm just
they're-
wondering, 'cause we
yeah.
did it about 20 years ago.
Yep, I mean, we did, leave the first one, the one by Ox Hill Lane, that's a big one. That's maybe in good condition, but that's the big culvert, so we left that one out, but other than that, we assumed that we'd replace them.
That's the one Alex put in.
Could be, I don't,
By the garden line,
Is it a 4 foot or would it be?
Yeah,
that's the one Alex did. But it's still there. I have some, how many culverts are going in?
Well, there's, I think it's 16 or 17.
Yeah, there's 14 called out with 2 mystery.
Two mystery culverts that could potentially be buried. They show up on the V-Trans
Right.
inventory, but, we didn't find.
But you don't see them.
Right.
Yeah, there's one across from our sawmill that isn't there that they have a flag at, that there's really nowhere to go with the water if it.
So does the culvert exist there?
It doesn't exist at all there, yeah. But I don't know if it's in the database of the V-Trans or what.
That's a 40. Yeah, there's actually 17 culverts and then 2 that are mystery culverts, I think.
So 15 you found and
17.
17 you found and 2 mystery culverts.
Yeah.
So 19. Okay,
According to
according to.
the schedule, yeah.
Have you looked at them?
Have I?
Yeah.
Yeah, I've looked at them, but you know, my scope going into it was to assume to replace all of them anyway while we're doing this big project. I mean, I haven't done a detailed assessment of the culverts themselves. I mean, you know, during the field work, we got a general idea of the condition.
Costs a lot, to put them in.
Yeah,
You're gonna, are they, my question is, I guess, do we need them all? Do we need all those culverts?
I mean, we can reassess to see, I don't know, Victoria, do you have any background on that?
yeah, so the assumption with the culverts is that most of them are in poor condition. And that the logical thing to do would be to go after them all and replace them all before you put down a lot of new pavement. Cause you don't wanna end up cutting fresh pavement to go after a culvert. Most of the culverts were assessed in poor condition. The road foreman stated that the culverts needed to be replaced. They haven't been done in 20 odd years. I think we all learned pretty well in summer of 23 that drainage makes or breaks your roads. And so rather than leave a culvert in poor condition, the decision was made to replace them.
Yeah, but as an engineer, didn't you look at those?
That wasn't part of my scope, no, my scope was. Design.
Replace the ones that are there?
Ones that are there, yeah, I mean, and generally speaking, it does make sense to take that approach with a big project such as this, you're pouring all your money into. The road itself, you know, if you look at the cost breakout of, you know, the culverts versus the road, you know, the culverts is. You know, no,
Well, what I know is that it costs a lot to put a culvert in, so if we don't need one in one area, then we don't need one, but if we do need one, it needs to go in. But you would be the person to tell us if it needs to go in or not. Wouldn't you? And then we pay you for it, do that?
I could do an assessment and provide that for the town,
You've already got a person here that's doing the culverts.
Yeah, that's us.
Yeah. Have you looked at them?
I haven't gone field verified each hole, no.
I think the assumption was that we would be replacing them given the the size of the project to begin with. Not replacing them.
Oh, I agree.
And
If
seems
you
like-
need one, they ought to be replaced, but if you don't need one, why do you replace that? And the other question is what size are those culverts? Are they all metal?
I think most of them are metal. I've got it on this chart here. They vary from 18 inches to
18, 24, 30.
18 to 36 inches.
Yep. We're all in plastic.
They'll be plastic.
They're all plastic?
They will be.
They will be,
Yeah.
all replaced.
Yeah, I think most of them are metal now.
They're old culverts.
No, I don't disagree with what Bob is saying, but the same token, I can just see if you've got a culvert you deem is acceptable, then another 4 or 5 years, it's no longer acceptable. I think I kind of tend to agree with if there's 17, there ought to be 17 new ones, I think, on this particular thing. Get the underneath taken care of, so you don't have to deal with that. You know, we want to save money, but we don't want to be stupid about it.
How deep are the culverts?
They vary. There are a handful of deep ones that are 16 feet deep, something like that. And I think, say the majority of them are, 3 to 4 feet, something like that.
Gonna be any problem, putting a tar down on top of them, or are they gonna move?
So the reclaim process should take care of most of that. I mean, we'll put them in before the reclaimer goes through. And then with the reblend and compaction, we shouldn't have much settling at that point. And we'll keep it in the same footprint as the existing culverts as far as elevation, so. We won't be able to be backfill under the pipe, put it on and then have it room to settle. It'll be on stable ground when we lay it back in.
Are you raising the height of the road?
Yes. A lot of the road in a lot of locations is lower than it should be anyway. So the design calls for reclaiming, regrading the reclaim, basically adding that grade on top of that reclaim layer.
How high
Okay.
are you raising?
Anywhere from, it's gonna vary because they're gonna kind of grade everything, but it'll be maybe 10 inches higher. We have grade sensitive areas that we have a detail to, like along the colors there. We have a detail that shows, grading that down, transitioning, to keep the grades basically where they are now.
What about the people who have driveways? No, I noticed that you're gonna try to compensate for the height of the road, I guess.
Mhm.
Have you talked to them? Do they know there's water gonna run down into the driveway, into their houses? What's this good?
Normally you transition those, and, they can be addressed, that we have grade detail in there, so we don't raise it too
Is
high.
that gonna be an added cost, or is that figured into the cost of this?
That was in the basement, the grade sensitive areas.
Yeah.
Okay.
Before.
So I read in this, one of these proposals that, that you're gonna go out like 10 feet in someone's driveway.
The apron wouldn't be my scope of work, but it does have a detail.
Yeah, or directed by engineer. There's a detail for that.
Now, how are you gonna do that? In a gravel out? Or are you going to?
Most of the
Pave it out.
driveways are hard packed, if it's a gravel driveway, we're gonna transition it with light material, the hard pack. If it's a paved driveway, you're gonna have to provide a paved.
And where's that water gonna go?
Well, we would build it, they would build it so it would just go in the same place it's going now, it's not. This is, something where, you gotta grade it when you're out in the field, so it doesn't create any issues. It's very doable. This job has been done, this type of treatment has been done before, so. There are
Bob's
some,
question is, this isn't just gonna dump water on people's
right,
property.
That's my question.
yeah, okay,
You don't want that to happen.
exactly,
I don't think
and
we-
we don't either.
You're raising the road,
Mhm,
you're putting a grade down, the water's gotta go someplace.
mhm. I mean, the roads,
Have you talked to the people up there?
not yet, but, I mean, outside of the public meetings that you folks have had about the project, we haven't gone, you know.
When's it gonna start?
Yeah, I mean, whenever you guys are done discussing it, I'd be more than happy to take you through the whole process, so.
Oh, you will?
Yeah, I got, yeah.
So stop asking questions.
No, no, you keep going. I'm just writing down notes so I can hopefully address all the concerns that you may or may not have. So I think it's kind of, in some ways, probably good to get kind of some of the questions out of the way. That way, you know, as you get going, if you start asking, you know, different things.
I'm interested in how you can raise the road and still not have water go into somebody's driveway into their house. Most of those driveways are straight to the house.
Yeah.
And,
Don't they have a culvert under them? Going off, you know, in the driveway, are they just going straight
some of
into
them
the culvert?
don't.
Yeah, no, a lot of the Iveses don't.
Some of the drives come right off the road.
They may have to have a culvert there.
There is an item for some driveways.
It's quite a long.
That's a,
Yeah, there are some driveways that don't have culverts now that we took into account.
and it's definitely a challenge, when you get into a reclamation type project like this. Is that the biggest challenge that we have on jobs like this is that there's always going to be certain transitions that are gonna be problematic. Yeah, it's not a one, you know, one fix for everything, so they all have to be kind of addressed differently. Depending on what the slope of the driveway is and things like that, so. And I think there is no easy answer to say they'll all be handled the same way, they'll all have to be looked at differently.
And that will be done while you're doing the project.
Yeah, yep.
And additional costs? Or is it gonna, or are we sticking with the 2.1 or whatever it is?
Yeah, there's some items in the contract to address, there's some driveway, culvert, pieces that are in there, as well as there's,
I read
it's
those.
called like a transition. Um. Allowance that was given to do some of that. So, a lot of it gets done when we're doing the main sub-base portion of the project, when we're doing the grading. And then you just kind of match like substances, so if it's a gravel driveway now, it becomes a gravel driveway afterwards, if it's a paved apron now, it becomes paved apron afterwards.
Now. You're gonna put a liner up the whole road,
Well, that is how it's intended.
does it need to be up the whole road?
Well, I mean,
Was that,
you know,
was that your idea?
Yeah, that's in the plan,
Does it need
the
it?
stabilization.
Does it need it?
In this situation, you know,
Put you on the
in
spot.
lieu of a full depth, rehabilitation, which would be millions and millions of dollars. This is, a good product for helping provide, support under the road. It essentially adds another 6 inches. It's equivalent to adding another 6 inches of dense grade material to the road, so.
On top of it?
Underneath
Oh,
it's
underneath.
going underneath the dense grade layer, so, and it separates the,
The dense grade layer is on top of the fabric.
correct. Yep.
And we need all that. We
in
need all
my-
that to build this road.
It's part of the design, and
I
I
know it,
recommended
but
it
do
as
we
part of
need
the
it?
design. In my opinion, it's, for this type of a project, it's appropriate, yes.
You don't think it would be cost effective to just do the wetter spots?
I think the whole,
I mean, that's kind of like,
yeah,
oh, we
when
got
you
a
look
wet
at
spot
the
here, let's do
soils.
the whole mile.
Look at the soils data, and you know, if you go down deep enough, there's enough fines in the base underneath that. In my opinion, warrant having the fabric. I mean, if your base was, you know. Closer to V-Trans specs, met the specs and. Yeah, there are certainly areas that are worse than other areas, but.
It has gravel underneath it, right, Larry? When you redid it before,
Right, yeah, yeah,
it's been gravel.
but it's still the frost and everything, it punches it up and it's not so good, so I mean, the idea of not doing fabric all the way might come back to bite you. You know, cause like you said, it's one wet spot one year and dry the next, but then the next year after that, it's back to wet, so I don't know,
So our problems with the road up there are because we have wet spots.
yes, I believe.
Well, it sounds also like the, I'm gonna use the wrong term, but the subgrade or whatever is not in all places up to retrace.
Yeah, right, like when you go underneath. You know, some areas you can see there was gravel put down. And over time, what happens is the fines from below that get pumped up into the gravel layer, contaminate that layer. And what the fabric does is it separates, you know, the layer underneath the road base. And prevents that from happening.
I put fabric down before, so I know,
Yeah, you know.
in
Yeah.
driveways, but you know, I've never done a road.
Mhm.
How thick is the tar?
4 inches. There's a 2.5 inch base course and then an 1.5 inch wearing course.
Is that on top of the 10 inches
Yes,
of dense?
Yeah.
So you're actually coming up 17 inches?
well, no, because, it's getting reclaimed and then graded. So,
I think I read someplace that you're reclaiming 9 inches.
So
Does that sound right?
yes, yeah,
So when they say reclaiming 9 inches, that's the depth that. So, you know, the machine is basically like a rototiller, right? So you set it based on certain depths and usually that depth is dependent upon how many thickness of pavement you have currently. So you want a right blend of the pavement with the sub base.
You're
So-
taking that, you're taking that off.
No, so it gets reclaimed, like you'd be tilling your garden, right? So
Right.
you go through and you till your garden and it fluffs a little bit, but then it gets graded back out. So you would have, you know, whatever's there. Would be reclaimed and then you would add your gravel to it and then your pavement would be your top. So you would be, you know, 14 inches high from current grade.
You're taking the tar off though, right? Or you grinding that right?
Grinds all into the sub base.
So, okay, so that's gonna be that'll be part of the sub base, that whole,
Yeah.
you're gonna grind that tar right up
Yep.
along with the gravel?
Yep. So it's.
So you're not removing any of it?
No. No, it's actually a value, you know, the structure of the pavement mixing with the sub base, as long as the sub base is good, which is, you know, becomes a good product, a good stabilized product to go off of, so.
Then on top of that, you're putting,
That's your matting and then your dense grade.
Yeah,
on top of that, you're putting the mat, and then on top of that, you're putting the dense grade, which is out there.
it says 10 inches on average, yeah.
And then 7 inches of tar on top of that.
4
inches.
but the reclaim layer will get graded out a little bit, you know, after they reclaim it. So, yeah, so the net increase would be, you know, anywhere from a foot to, I guess, 14 inches. But there's grade sensitive areas too, when you grade it down.
And you think that's not gonna interfere, that's not gonna cause water to go on these people's property and cause a problem for them?
I think there's ways, as Chris had indicated, to mitigate it during construction or to address it during construction. You know, everyone's different.
I mean, again, I'm just a contractor, don't have a PE or, you know, I did do a significant amount of schooling, not that. But, you know, so just kind of a little background on Pike and, so I've been an area manager, I'm an area manager at Pike, so I'm in charge of all the, roadway construction jobs that we do in Vermont. Actually, Nick worked for me as a PM for quite some time. So we've been involved in a lot of these, both at a town level, and at a very high state level, and we worked with John at the state and the town, because we worked at, Powell Hill Road a couple years ago. So, you know, just Pike ourselves, we've done 21 major state jobs in the last, 15 years that I've been the area manager. We've had, and Nick's been a part of 2 of them, we entered these into awards, so we had 4 that entered the top 10 awards in the country. And we had 2 that actually became finalists for awards in the country. We never won the top dog.
This should be a number 1.
Yeah, but they,
2.1 million. then.
but regardless, and usually, you know, these ones we're talking are $8 to $25 million type jobs, but then we do a lot of town jobs, and all the town jobs are different. But they all have kind of basic functions to them, right? I mean, you're still, no matter what, you have the same goals, right? The transitions, the alleviation of water and things like that. And I live in Bethel, so I travel North Road quite a bit. And, you know, in my personal opinion, the reason why the road's in such bad shape is the water has no way of getting off the road. And you can clearly see that the really bad areas are the areas where the water just can't get off the road. Like when you get down to the 4 Corner area and places like that where the surrounding berms are higher than the road. So the water just holds into that road and it just saturates.
I think I agree with you.
So typically what we do, and I'll just pass out, and I apologize, I only brought 6 of them. I didn't know we were having a big meeting, but I have, these are the schedule. John. Sure, one password here.
You need any more coffee?
So essentially what we do, and this is the same plan, you know, that John's figured up here and that we do on all the jobs like this is, the first thing you do is you go in and you tackle your drainage, right? So waters, construction is gonna do the drainage work for us, which in this case is under drain and cross culvert pipes and head walls. So the reason why we tackle the drainage first really is to get the water start going in the right direction. And with that, what you will start to see is that roadway will start to dry out. So I mean, if you go up and down North Road in those bad sections, water's on the road and water can't get off the road because there's no ditches. Because some of those areas, there's not even any ditch line.
It hasn't been maintained.
So it just sits, you know?
Hasn't been maintained.
And it just eats away at the pavement and then it gets down under and it just starts creating a soup under there. So, and you've got some decently heavy traveled vehicles that come down that road, so that really just complicates things.
That's my other question.
So we'll start off, water's is gonna come in. The goal is to start on the 21st, so they're gonna tackle the under drain. So under drain, like John was saying, there's, you know, until you get out there, you don't really kind of know exactly where you're putting your under drain. You know, it could be ledge and things like that, where you have to start and stop, runs. But the under drain really runs parallel to your roadway, and it helps alleviate that moisture out of the roadway back into your ditch lines where they should go. And it just kind of ties into an existing drainage that you have in the project. And then there was,
Under drain, is it under the road?
it kind of runs under the shoulder of the road.
Off the edge of pavement. but
It
not
is
the
off,
road.
yeah.
Yep,
The water from the roadbed would wick out that pipe.
it's usually done on the lower elevation parts of the road, areas that are, you know, super saturated that you can see from go.
Right.
On that.
And they head right straight to the culvert.
Yeah, or into your ditch line. Yep. And what that will really do is it'll just start getting that moisture to get out of your sub-base area and really get where it's supposed to be going. The culvert pipes, I mean, that really, like you guys were discussing, depends on how old your infrastructure is in there, assuming that majority of it's pretty old, so that's why they're all getting changed out. I think Larry made a pretty good point that it kind of makes sense to do it, like, you know, even if you had some that might be kind of good now, but as soon as you did it 4 years later, you're saying you have to dig these
I'm
things
not
up.
opposed to having a
So,
culvert, I'm not
yeah.
opposed to having a culvert. All I want is the culverts to be where the water's coming down and it goes through the culvert.
Sure, yeah.
I don't want a culvert and no water going through it.
Mhm.
So every culvert should have water going through it.
Right. Yep.
And there's a couple places up there where the water comes out of the bank on the side of the road.
Mm.
And I hope that we get those fixed.
We'll catch that with your ditching. All your ditching and stuff will get
So-
that going the right way.
Yeah, so the culvert pipes will get installed with the head walls. So that whole process there is gonna be 3 to 4 weeks to do all the drainage work. During that 3 to 4 weeks, at the same time, you're starting to you will start to see, well, you'll start to see the road will dry out in places that have been pretty super saturated. And then we come in, we open the road up. So, when I say open it up, is we bring the reclaimer in there for 3-4 days. It just pulverizes all the pavement together with the sub base, kind of blends it all together like you're gardening. And then at that point, then you really can see where your problem areas are. So you really can't see your problem areas until the pavement's been removed. At that point, like usually on our state jobs that we work on is, once we get to the reclaim process, then you'll see the areas, they'll be kind of punky. They hold moisture, and after a day or two, if they're still like that on the state job, what we do is box them out. So we come in there and take them out 1 foot, 2 feet, in depth, dig it out, put new sub base, or actually put fabric in with some sub base, and then we move to the next one. So these could be like, you know, a section could be 500 feet long, then you skip up because this section's really good. So maybe that is an option, like someone was saying about some cost saving methods, and those are options, but so we do, you know, so typically on a state job, we just go find all the punky spots, and then the engineer will say, I want to do X amount of feet here, let's remove this piece and just put this piece back in. In this case, on this job, there's 2 methods to the to this. A portion of the road is going to get fabric with dense grade material on top of it. So whatever the reclaim is going to look like, you're going to put a fabric, and then you're going to put that 10 inches of dense graded material down. And then the other portion of the roadway will be one where some of the reclaimed material will be moved, the fabric will go down, and then the reclaimed material will go back on top, and then you'll put the sub base back on top of it. So there's like 2 items in there for them, and they're, you know, one was like $1 or $2, and the other one was like $4 or $5 a square to do that work. So that total work there will take probably about 2 weeks or a hair over 2 weeks to kind of go from tip to toe, put your fabric in, put your dense grade on. And then we'll come in and pave the base course. So we'll come in and do the 2.5 inches of the base course. And then Dylan's gonna come in and do the ditching and the stone lining. It would be nice to do your ditching up front, but the problem is if you do your ditching right out of the gate and then you go do your grading, you push a lot of your material back in your ditch lines. So, we'll pave the first layer, and then Dylan will spend a couple of weeks there just doing the stone and the ditching, all the cleanup work. And then we'll come back in, pave the wearing course, and then tackle your shoulder material on the edges, and then your driveway transition. So that's kind of the scope. So we had starting April 21st and looking to be done by July 11th. And I believe the completion date was
August 29th.
August 29th, but the interim completion was like, I'm sorry, incompletion. The interim completion was August, or substantial, and then the final completion was in October or something like that.
Yeah,
So we show getting the project done at least a month ahead of time from what was agreed upon.
So you have traffic control here 5 days, is that signage and stuff, or is it?
Yeah, so this is just basically us coming in and saying, so the idea would be next week that we start coming in and putting things out like a message board, even though it didn't call for it in the bid, we'll put a message board. I talked to the town of Bethel, so we can put one on down at the bottom of North Road. Haven't talked to Barnard yet, but ideally it'd be nice to put one down by the lake somewhere so that the whole North Road kind of understands that there's gonna be work or closures happening on that road, so they can start to plan for that, right? So there was, you know, discussions through the bid phases about being able to temporarily close the road at different times. And if so, that there would be set times a day, like obviously you wouldn't close it when they're picking the kids up, you know, in the morning for the bus type deal. So there was some talks about, or at least what we were kind of looking at doing, because especially when you get into doing the culvert pipes, some of them are deep. And doing the fabric and the amount of sub base and stuff going down, is it's very difficult. The road's not terribly wide to begin with, but it's pretty difficult to be able to put everybody into 11-foot safe lane. And do your work. So the idea would be during those times is to close the road from 8 AM to 4 PM. So 8 AM should give enough time for the buses to go pick kids up. and people to head out. Majority of people had to work by 8 o'clock. And then we would locally close the traffic. So no through traffic, so it'd be, you know, if someone needs to go to their home, they could still get to their house. And then we would just close the portion that we're working on, so, I mean, we wouldn't close the whole 2.2 miles every day, all day, but wherever we're working, we would close that portion.
There's a pretty good detour up around Cleveland too, that they can take, you know, and get back to, you know, the upper side of there where.
And then the idea was to open it back up by 4 o'clock so that people coming back home from work wouldn't have to experience that. There will be some times where we will not have to use the road closures and we'll just run one-way traffic with flaggers and things like that, like normal. But just kind of some of the nature of the work is pretty intensive and you'll be able to accelerate the project faster by closing the road at different periods of time. And, you know, so the idea there would be put a message board on each end of North Road, kind of explaining that, you know, we'd update it once a week, so we'd say, you know, from the week of this to this, between these hours, just local traffic only, or no through traffic, or however we want to put that out there. And then as they get up to the work zone, then we put what we call type 4 barricade, which is just kind of a large plastic metal flash barricade that stands up, you know, for 4 or 5 feet high, and just would say like road closed. We'd still be able to get, you know, majority of the people Dylan knows in that area, but you know, that little stretch of road, we'd still be able to get people to their homes. Just wouldn't want every day, all day traffic going through there. So the, you know, some of the subs that we'll be using, Waters Construction will do, again, like I said, the head walls and culverts under drain. Dylan's gonna do the stone line ditching. We'll use ADA flagging to do some flagging if needed. Pike Industries will do the reclamation, the sub-base fabric that's needed, and the paving portion of it, so. And then as we get going, we submit certifications or things to John, so like all of our materials will be at West Lebanon. You know, and as we use materials like fabric or things like that, you know, he gives copies of those certs, so you have those. And then I was just chatting before, so we had done a very comparable job. We did the Howe Hill Road job with John.
2020?
Yeah, was that COVID? Yeah, or before COVID, after?
Just before COVID.
Yeah, so we did the Howe Hill Road, which, you know, went from Sharon up over to Pomfret, kind of similar.
Yeah.
Never had a little bit more room to it, like it wasn't as confined. That one you had a little bit more room to work in. But very, very similar up through there. We did pretty much the same thing, did some drainage, quite a bit of drainage improvement, did a lot of stone. We did some box outs where there was some funky material, paved that, and that's held up really well, so.
Yeah.
I mean, I think one thing that, you know, there could be, one thing that's definitely needed on the road is that the road height does need to come up. So there's, the reason why a lot of the water is sitting on the road is because in some areas, road height isn't high enough, so the water's not able to get off the road. You know, you probably could look at, you know, some of the, you know, there could be some sub-base dense graded savings there. Maybe that stuff is like, I don't know, $20 a ton or something like that, and there's, I don't know,
Yeah, it's a good.
7,000 tons, so there's, you know, $140,000 of.
Was it 7,000 tons or?
So there's quite a bit of,
7,300.
so there's some opportunity there, I think.
Yeah.
We wanted to use less in grade sensitive areas.
And then, you know, the other thing that I can see that there could be opportunities with would be like, you know, if the town decided, do we want to put fabric on the whole road, or do we want to just identify those problem areas that once we chew through the pavement, that we can see that these are exactly problem areas and address those only. You know, there's probably no foolproof way of, you know, you could lay the whole thing with fabric and be the same thing down the road, or you could do pieces of it, could come out fine, or you could do pieces of it and it doesn't come out. So there's always some risk to it, but that would probably be some opportunities for the town.
John, what is the cost of the fabric per foot or?
What
Roughly.
was the bid price? I don't have the bid,
It was, the quantities are by the square yard for the
Yeah.
fabric, so the method where you're just putting the fabric only and then the stone on top. That one was about, or just under $2 a square yard, I think.
I don't have.
And then the one where you were gonna have to remove the reclaimed material, put the fabric down, put the reclaimed material back on top, and then put stone on was about $5 a square.
But 450.
Yeah.
450.
And then when you're
Well,
talking,
that's the box out, what you would call the box out.
well, that was kind of, that one's more, there's more intensive because you gotta remove material.
Sure.
Put the fabric down, put that same material back on top of it. So basically what you're doing is you're putting a barrier underneath the reclaim.
Yeah.
Where the other one, you're just putting the barrier on top of the reclaim.
The fabric is $100,000 out of the 2.1 million, just to give you an idea.
Yeah,
The dense grade is almost 300,000. I'm sorry, it's 270,000 out of the $2 million, so 10%. My sort of recommendation, I guess, in terms of saving costs is, I would tend to put the money into the base and, maybe shave a half an inch off the pavement layer, and you can always come back and pave it later. Type of thing. I put the money in the base because that's where,
well,
what
that's what
supports your
keeps
pavement.
it right side up, and so you can use it year after year if you get a good base.
I mean, I can't remember if we did that for Howe Hill or not. I think Howe Hill was 4 inches too. But just a thought. But yeah, the pay item 5 bituminous pavement is 636,000 out of the 2 million. So that's a quarter of your job right there, your budget.
This road gonna, handle truck traffic, trailer truck traffic and. Gonna be good.
Well, I think the challenges you have on that road, just like a lot of the roads in Vermont, is it's the vehicles that don't have the axle ratings that are traveling on that road, so you get really heavy single axle, maybe a farm truck or things like that. That's what really does a lot of your damage, because you're putting all your weight on one axle rather than 3 axles, or those types of things, and that's common in Vermont, right? I mean, if it's state job, town job, you see a lot of agriculture vehicles, but that's,
Well, trucks can go down Route 12.
yeah.
They don't have to go that way, but they go that way.
Well, the differences would be is if you're on a state highway, so your pavement thicknesses, so normally on a state highway, you have 2 feet of dense graded material, solid dense graded material, and then you have up to 9 inches of pavement. So, where on a town job, normally, you're probably lucky if you have a foot of gravel and you're talking 4 inches. So you got, basically half less of a road to begin with that has the same type of traffic on it, right? You could have a log truck go up and down North Road, or an agriculture, truck, or, this time of year when you start seeing, manure being spread, get those single axle, vehicles, and so there's a lot of weight that goes on the roads. But, the state does things, they design things at a higher level, but there's also more easels or traffic going over that. Where North Road doesn't have as much as Route 12. But in some cases, they might have some weighted vehicles that do travel that road that,
But you essentially have half the wear surface to work.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and a lot of that really comes down to, well, one, the easel traffic or the amount of traffic on your roads, but the two is, towns just can't afford 9 inches of pavement on the road. Like if you could put 2 inches of sub base and 9 inches of pavement, you probably wouldn't have to do them quite as often, right?
Right.
But, everybody, we're all in that same boat where everything's expensive, and, when the state does these, they're $15 million, jobs, but,
So I noticed in this bid, you've got, looks like to me, you have 2 different kinds of pavement, and we have to pick one of them.
so what,
We went with the better.
You did.
Yeah.
oh, yeah, so liquid grades, yeah.
Well, it just looks to me like, there's. difference of 2.15 and 2.18.
So, I think that was the
So
liquid
we're
option.
getting the better pavement or the thicker pavement or whatever it has.
It's just a higher grade liquid. It's got, the 7028 has the polymers in it, right?
Yeah, I mean,
It's what we did on Hell
if
Hill.
you figure out the liquid thing, then I'll get you a job. Because- And I'm gonna tell you, it's an evolving thing, this, all the technology is always changing. Liquid grades are always changing. Vermont is almost an impossible area to work in because unless we put something 4 feet in the ground to get underneath the frost level, we have, freeze thaw, and in Vermont, we have freeze thaw, once a week?
Yeah.
In the wintertime, so that pavement is constantly moving, right? So the idea with the 7028 liquid is it's a little more flexible. It's not perfect, but it's a little bit more flexible that can adhere a little bit more of that movement. But it's also a more expensive liquid because they add, these polymers that help it be flexible.
In the process of doing all this work, you have to do testing along the time. Testing the soils, testing the pavement, testing.
So normally like any of the gravel that is brought into the job has a spec to hit that, so those are tested, they're usually.
Who's responsible for that?
So we have the test results and then we give those to John, John has his specs that are very close to state specs, so it'll be kind of the same thing we do every day. So he has a spec that we have to hit on the sub-base gravel piece, and then there's what we call mixed designs for the pavement, so.
So John, you do the test, you give the results to him, that's how it works?
Well, this is,
For the ground.
yeah, this is only playground. They won't test anything he's already done all that.
Anything that's
Core
in
samples.
existing, you mean? Like
I know,
anything's
I'm
in the
just
road.
talking about what you bring in from.
Yeah, anything that comes in outside, yeah.
So yeah, those tests come from the suppliers. They submit them and then I verify that they meet the spec and then tell them and then they can deliver it. There's also the compaction testing, which I'm a big advocate for. We did that on Howe Hill. I thought it worked out great. We did it on the reclaim layer. I think I have notes in there about, the town potentially hiring an independent contractor to come do some nuke tests on the reclaim layer. And then with the pavement as well, Pike has their own QAQC. We used it on Howe Hill. And what they do is they'll show up and work with the paving crew for the day. And she'll say, oh, you gotta adjust your rolling pattern to get this compaction, and they'll do that. And once they get their rolling patterns down, it kind of just works, what works. You want your pavement to test, right in a certain range. So I'm an advocate for that. I mean, I would recommend that the town. And for the how important it is for compaction and everything, I think it's money very well spent. M&W Soils is who I used before. There's other companies out there, but.
Is that an additional cost for this?
That's part of the engineering, to have a tester work on behalf of,
Is it all figured into our cost?
the testing is, I don't believe I included it in my engineering costs. But the QAQC, work.
But that's
I
a
did have a
problem,
note for
isn't it?
that.
Not a problem. I like it. I think it's true. I read
Yeah.
in here, compact tests are really important. And why isn't it included in the price of the project?
Well,
I'm not gonna like it. I'm gonna tell you right now, I'm not gonna like it if this comes in over 2.1 million.
Mhm. And this
Somebody else
work
can eat
is
that cost.
maybe a total of 2,000 out of that.
Well, if it's out of it, that's okay. If it's above it.
Yeah,
okay.
I understand.
It needs to be done. I read it in here that it's one of the most important things you can do.
It is included, we did have a note about QAQC in the plans that, Pike has QAQC, folks that work for them. So that is included, that's in a note in the plan.
Originally, we were told this project would be 1.5. And then, and not only that, but it would be reduced by the amount of money that the town has to put into the project. Now it's 2.1. And the 1.5 hasn't even been reduced, it's 1.5 plus. So we're almost $1 million, well, we are probably $1 million over on the project. So I'm not interested, I want if we're gonna build this road, then it better be good, and I don't want it to go over, period. I don't think the community has been told what is gonna happen from the very beginning. But now we're here, and we're gonna build the road, so I want that road built really well.
Patrick Nell has a hand up.
Oh, yes, Nell. Sorry, I didn't even see you there. You're muted. Still muted.
She's working on it.
Oh, okay.
Give her a second.
Yeah, I probably missed this. I did get here late, but I mean, have we talked about the tariffs that are in place? I mean, I don't know if the culverts are already like that cost number are things. I mean, I agree with what Bob just said. I was wondering about the budget and what if the costs can stay under instead of going over.
Well, as far as tariffs go, like there's nothing in this job that would be influenced by tariffs. So the only thing sometimes that comes out of country is the liquid that goes in the asphalt, but that has been exempted from those things. So our asphalt that we get is not from another country. So now and everything pretty much, I think all the coal that you guys buy is all by American.
Yeah, it's all,
So
yeah, and it's been purchased.
Yeah.
And our suppliers have held true to their quotes, so there should be no price change there.
So Chris,
Great.
you see any overrun costs right now?
I mean, I would never want to go on record saying no, but I think there's a lot of opportunities to come under cost. I do believe that. You know, I think John's done a good job of kind of painting the worst case scenario type, you know, I mean, that's his job is to kind of make it not go over, you know, so it does come under type deal. And I really think that there really are opportunities for the town to do things, I mean, John designed a well put together project here, you know, but I think you also as a town just have to figure out what you can afford and, you know, and now I'll just say my town, 2 years ago, we did Christian Hill Road, which was 0.8 miles up Christian Hill Road that looked just as bad as North Road. And you know, I think we did that for about $400,000. So it's, you know, now we didn't put in, you know, head walls and fabric and all that. We put 4 or 5 inches of gravel, ditched, stone lined, you know, did a little under drain in some of the problematic areas and then we put 5 inches of pavement on it. That's held up well, but I mean, every place is different, so it's kind of. I mean, at this point, we're here to build what he has put forward and I don't see any complications of, you know, unless there's an unknown out there and we get digging and find out, you know, a stream in the middle of the road or something. I mean, you know, there's none of that. You know, I think there's probably some opportunities like they were talking, maybe there's a couple less culverts that need to be changed, or maybe there's some less gravel that could be put down, or some less fabric, or you know, those types of things will save, you know, a little bit here, a little bit there, adds up quickly.
As long as it doesn't sacrifice the project, that's my concern. I mean,
Right.
we're all concerned about how much we're spending here, and that's the purpose of this meeting. in my opinion. But I just don't wanna cut the project short in places and say, oh geez, we shouldn't have done that, or we should have done this. And John has given his best effort to what we has planned until we get opened up. Once you get opened up, then maybe you can adjust it a little, but I just don't feel comfortable. I've been in business for years and years and years and fixed equipment and done things, and every time you try to save money, it costs somebody money. You know, it comes back to bite you. My view.
This has already cost us $1 million more than it was supposed to.
Well, I know, but that's life in the fast lane.
That was also the initial estimate after the road was driven. It was before any engineering. It was just someone's off the cuff estimate after driving the road so that we could apply for the class 2 paving grant. So it's kind of disingenuous to say it's $1 million over budget when it was an initial estimate pre-engineering
They
that
winged it.
was
They winged it.
used for that
Back to the
number.
I think the important question here is, or the important point is, I mean, Chris's view is, and you can confirm this, John, this is not an optimistic estimate. This is real time. This is what it should cost, not best case scenario. This is kind of almost worst case scenario. This is real. This is what I hope it will cost. This is what it will cost.
Right, yeah, I feel confident, and there's a lot of, like Chris said, there's a lot of opportunity, I think, to contain costs and save costs on this project, so.
So there is opportunity if you do open it up and we find a problem. There are areas we can shave if we need to, you know, like a house remodel, and suddenly you open up the wall, it's all rotted, and now you don't get the entire kitchen is new. You gotta reuse some of the appliances or something. Which is something I understand better than building a road.
Or if we open the wall and the studs are in really good shape when we thought we had to replace them, and then you don't have to do that anymore, then you've saved a little bit of
Then you
money.
save a little bit of money.
And some of this too could just be the, you know, like for instance, a majority of the town jobs that we do, we come in. You know, for the most part, we come in, we reclaim the road if it's a reclamation job like this, reclaim it. In some cases, we add gravel, sometimes we don't, and then we pave it. So that's kind of like a very typical town job. But the things that you also don't see behind the scenes is that the town probably already paid somebody to come in and itch that job, probably paid somebody to come in and do the culverts the year before. You know, so where this is all in one project rather than you guys did a lot of little stuff to it. You know, which kind of gives you more of a shock and awe.
Right, yeah.
But I will say that we typically almost never put fabric under the road. Now, there's a lot of people who do put fabric under the road, but I don't typically do it. I do a lot of it, but so that's why I'm just saying there's some opportunities there. I feel, but I think, you know, I mean, had the town maybe came in last year and did their own culverts or, you know, I don't know if you have a ditching plan or whatever, you know, had you done that ahead of time, you probably could have eliminated some of those things in this contract, but you kind of need to do them, you know.
We obviously don't have a ditching.
Maybe you need some.
Yeah,
But you know, I mean, like
Yeah,
that stuff's gotta get done, I mean, or else
Right.
you're stuck with the same thing that you have now.
There's places if the water comes over the top of the road, you know, out of the culvert over the road.
Yeah.
I mean, I hate to leave you guys, I gotta go put the kids up.
okay,
Great to see you guys.
thanks, Dylan.
Talk to you soon.
I just wanna say what Roger said in that this had better be a firm price. Make that very clear. The engineer has to make sure this is the price. And my question is, are you on the project all day, every day? Do we have somebody on the project every day that they can communicate with it?
I'm available to, if questions come up, or whatever.
That's not the question. The question is.
I understand trying to answer that, yes.
No, answer it.
So,
no.
my scope is specific with the town, the scope that the select board already approved. It's, I'm not there every day. That's not in my scope. It's X amount of, meeting X amount of, site visits, and my plan was to, and what I typically do with these jobs is I'll show up during important times, like when they're putting a culvert in or something, and be there to inspect it, check in on it, and as questions come up. But no, I didn't intend on being a full-time resident engineer on this job. It's not in the scope.
You know, I wouldn't have expected you to be, so.
You are on call though, wouldn't you?
Yes, sir. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if a question comes up, I can come right out, I can answer, I can pick up the phone and talk with Nick or whoever. And work with them, but,
And we worked together before, and so as Mike.
And I would say that's-
We have good lines of communication.
it's sort of.
In the town realm of things, that's normal. So that's, typically, even if it's road foreman or whoever.
I'm not the typical guy.
No, but I'm saying like, across.
I wanna make sure, I just
Yeah.
wanna make sure that it's a good job, great, as a matter of fact. For that amount of money, and that we come in on that amount of money, and that, we don't have to spend any more money. Because we're already spending more than what we anticipated. And I think it's too bad for the people that were here as a select person before. That they weren't given the information that they needed.
Yeah, I mean, one thing I would probably suggest that we do, I mean, typically we're gonna bill this thing like once a month, I think it's what it said in there. So I guess how I would view this is we'll probably bill it, like after we get the drainage work done, we'll put one billing in. So maybe it might be an opportunity for John or the town to have, what are those items in that? Like, this is how much it should be contractual, and this is how much we are at that point, so. I'll make it up, let's say,
That'd be a nice.
yeah, let's say if you ran into 2 extra culverts you had to put in, now you say, okay, we're $5,000 over our budget so far.
Yeah.
Or maybe we didn't have to put in a couple, and then we're saying we're $10,000 under, so at least we kind of have a little float there that we can kind of look at. Now, I will say that's, I wouldn't use that as a measurement like every month, because it's only gonna be like a 2-month job. And some of these processes come fast, so like, when you're adding gravel or something like that, it's a lot of money quickly. Like, you're gonna put a lot of money out the door quick, so, that might be more like, do you break it down by the week or something like that, so that you can kind of have some parameters and checks and balances on, if something all of a sudden doesn't look right, it gives John and us in the field the opportunity to make some choices out there. I know when people say make adjustments, you think that you're losing quality. It doesn't necessarily mean that. It just means that it gives us the opportunity that maybe instead of 10 inches of gravel, we put 8 inches on because, to save a little bit. Now, does that mean that you're gonna lose the integrity of the road for 2 inches of gravel? Probably not. But it gives you some opportunity.
Interesting. Ted, right? Ted's your project manager.
So
For
Ted,
waters.
so Ted works for waters, yeah.
Waters,
Yeah.
oh,
Yeah.
oh, I thought you were for the whole project.
So we'll have somebody.
Getting a good deal there.
Yeah, we'll have somebody out there with Pike. So when Waters is in town, Ted, you're gonna be out there, so the first 3 or 4 weeks, Teddy will be out there with Waters. And it'll pretty much just be Waters doing their thing, so we'll have our project manager out there checking in with them,
You're a project manager. You have one,
yes, yeah,
okay.
so we'll be communicating with them daily
And
on,
we're gonna meet him.
yep, how things are going on that,
Is he gonna be on the project?
when
the time?
Waters is out there, probably won't be out there all day, every day. But when we're in town, he'll be there all the time.
You're only in town when you're putting the payment down, aren't you?
Well, no, we'll still have somebody that will be at the project, so, yeah. So Teddy will be kind of in charge of the drainage type pieces of it.
Who's letting the board know how you're progressing? That's what I wanna know.
I don't know. However you, I don't know, however you wanna do this, we could. I mean, I don't know when your meetings are scheduled, you're probably 2 months, right?
Yep.
I mean, if you wanted,
Every other Tuesday.
2 weeks.
if you wanted, I could swing through every other
Well, I
week
don't,
and
I don't think.
do a board
I don't know
presentation
if
or
you have to
something.
at every meeting, but I think, like, for instance, Roger had ought to know how the project's progressing on a regular basis.
We can do a 2-week construction meeting with someone from the town. We typically do that anyway. We can schedule it one
Yeah,
day.
the town of Norwich had asked us, of us, and, you know, whether it's just one person or the whole team.
If you run into a,
Sent them every 2 weeks.
let's say you run into a point where Chris has been talking. And you're thinking, okay, we can save some money here, or it's gonna cost more money here. Who's gonna know that? How soon is that information gonna get to the board?
Well, the information will get to John, you know, instantly, because we'll
Yeah,
have
I'll be in
communications with him all the time.
With Victoria as part of my work.
How about Roger?
Patrick.
Patrick,
Oh, sorry.
Patrick.
Sorry, Patrick.
So from a town perspective, typically we would appoint a select board member or two, or the road foreman or someone else who has been granted authority on behalf of the board to work with John and work with Pike and supervise the project. And that could include a pre-authorization to accept recommended cost-saving measures, so that you're not trying to constantly call select board meetings to deal with something that can just be taken care of quickly, as long as that person is pre-authorized to take that action on behalf of the board.
I think that there should be some kind of a link between Pike and what's happening out there and a board member. And Patrick's fine with me if he's willing to do it, but you don't have to really do anything, but you do have to know what's going on, that's.
Yeah. Well, I think what they were saying is that link exists, there's just one extra link than what you're envisioning, is Mike would let John know what's up, and then John.
However, but I think it's important that you know, especially if there's gonna be a cost overrun, and you're thinking.
Oh, yeah.
You'd ask them point blank. How's that gonna work?
And we'll be, I mean, I would assume, you know, how we done it in the past, we'll have daily slips, so we'll send John daily. Well, usually lags behind a day, but, you know, slips on this is how many feet of pipe we put in, or we put 2 head walls in, or whatever that is, so that. Those, you know, so that he has that, so when we get to like estimate cutting time. So he'll get those daily, so he'll be able to. I know I could keep a spreadsheet on the job that as we're doing things, we can see how that's.
So I read in contract that the town can have a person that's there every day and is in communication with you all the time. If we don't need that, and we can get the communication to Patrick, then I think that's probably okay, as long as you have that link, so you can make that call.
Yeah, no, I understand. We feel comfortable with that.
I trust Patrick.
Yeah, if you have a touch point of every other week, get together and we can go over things, that's fine, because, you know, most of the discussions we'll have, like. If we run into something, we'll talk to John, get his opinion on what he wants to do. You know, and then usually we go do it if it's, you know, and there's a lot of that little stuff that comes up, right? Like, should we move the culvert 10 feet down the road, or discharging here, should it discharge, you know, there's always those discussions. But if there's a major discussion, then obviously it sounds like we have to pull.
In that situation, I think that you would say, we should move the culvert 10 foot down the road for this reason. And is that okay? In here, it also says change orders. Any change orders, like if something's gonna happen major in that road, there has to be a change order. My experience with change orders, they usually cost more money.
Well, I mean, there's always verbiage in the contracts in regards to change orders, because sometimes there are unforeseen things that happen on jobs, or maybe something that got left out, and it was being put together, or, you know, or something just happens way out there. But, you know, normally a lot of changes don't happen.
Okay.
But, you know, usually the fair practice is that you show cost of your change order, you present your cost with your fair markup, which is normally 10 or 15%, and then that's kind of the price, but I wouldn't. I don't foresee anything on that. I really do think that there's a lot of opportunities to, you know, come under the budget here. I really do think that.
In my experience of watching schools be built, there are constant change orders and end up costing the school a lot more money, the town. In my case, my sense is, I hope that you don't have any. I don't have to deal with any. And I hope the engineer's doing his job. And, but if you haven't, sure gonna say so. This is a lot of money, this is a lot of money for this town, have to put up for a road.
We have our lines of communication.
Hmm.
And once we get rolling, we can figure out how we're gonna, if it's a matter of, daily or every other day email, just a 2-line summary. Everything's on target, or, this is what happened today, this is what didn't happen today. I think
Yeah,
that works for me.
I usually do a brief daily and report anyway when I go to a job,
Yeah.
so I can provide those for sure.
And so it also gives us a little tighter tracking that's not once a month or every 2 weeks or whatever.
So my understanding is that you're being paid by the hour or for the job.
I'm being paid by the hour under the contract, and I have a not to exceed number on my engineering contract with the town. We're into the final task of the contract.
So that's included in this 2.1 million.
It's separate.
No, that's separate.
What's it gonna be?
It's already in the it's not to exceed, I think, I don't have it in
I
front of
think
me,
it was
it's
like-
20-something thousand or
Yeah, I don't remember.
26,000 maybe. I think.
Somewhere around there.
Around
I
12.
thought it wasn't included in your contract.
Because the engineering came first and we contracted the engineer to design the project and then provide construction supervision
Because we can't get a
services.
bid unless we have the engineer. So the engineering needs to be done upfront.
So you have pre-engineering costs,
Yes,
Pre-engineer, it's engineering, it's like you design the road and then we get
pre-road costs.
pre-road costs, okay.
How much
Yeah.
money are we talking about?
It's like
50,000?
No,
No,
26.
I think
26.
it's 26. I'm just trying to pull it up on my phone here. I don't know.
You can't bid a road if you don't know how. it's
Oh,
being
no,
built.
I agree. And that's why I don't know why it was put out to the town before.
are we set with Pike and Waters? We've been here for an hour and a half or an hour and 15.
Yeah.
They might not wanna leave. They wanna hear.
I'm good.
So I think the only thing, just wanted to make sure that. So with the road closure allowances here,
Mhm.
one, I wanted to make sure, are we okay with the time parameters that we have offered? Which is 8 AM to 4 PM. So we would close that to through traffic, so obviously if you live on one side of the project, the other, you can get to your house. But, log truck and people that go from Barnard over to Bethel, we'll have to take 12 or, a different way around. Are you guys good with that? And then I guess we will put the communications out on the project, so we'll put a message board down in Barnard, put one down in Bethel. We'll update the message weekly. Dates, whatever, through traffic during these times. And then as we get up to the work zone, there'll be a barricade in the road that'll say road closed.
We need to have,
Um,
EMS involved too, or.
Right, so that's kind
Yeah.
of where I'm getting at is,
So
so who would help communicate with
So
us to
typically-
EMS or locally?
if you can
Facebook
send
or
to
whatever you
me
guys-
like your advance, like here's the construction timeline, we expect local traffic only. Usually what happens is that I will put out like to the newspaper and onto the listservs and all of those things like, hey, construction's coming, we anticipate periods of local traffic only, here's how often we're gonna update you. And then what I usually like to have is a direct telephone number for whoever's going to be on site. And then I will give that phone number to dispatch. So that if there is EMS or anything like that that needs to come through, dispatch will call the on-site and give you a heads up to say, hey, we have emergency traffic coming. So that you guys know as early as reasonably possible that there's lights and sirens heading your way.
Okay.
Is generally how we run
So
that.
we'll do this, so you and I would do that on a weekly basis.
Yeah,
Is there a certain day of the week that you wanna have it in by to warn people for the following week, like, or?
It's helpful, just as early as
Each
possible.
week we'll get-
So like I would wanna put out this week to say like, hey, in 2 weeks, you're gonna see work start. And then, yeah, I think
Then after that,
weekly,
once we get
weekly
going,
is
just
fine
adjust it.
after that. Yeah, just to
And
give
I
the,
would
this is
say-
what's
I
happening.
would say a majority of the work that we will be doing out there, if an emergency vehicle needed to get through that road, that we could make that happen almost instantly. But there could be times like when we do some of those deeper pipes.
Right.
That you could have that open. So maybe what we'll do is, on those days that we do the deeper ones, we'll communicate with the town about, would
Yeah,
any of
yeah,
us have to take a
and,
different route?
and exactly, you
you know,
just
yeah.
wanna let us know like, hey, we know on this day between 10 and 2, we're going after this culvert, the road's gonna be open, you're not getting through. And then same thing, we can just let dispatch know, and then that allows them to send mutual aid. Or to send the crews around before they get to the point where they would have to turn around and backtrack.
And believe it or not, it always happens at least once when you're on a job, so it's always.
Well, especially North Road where you've got, you know, Werva in particular who might be trying to go back and forth that way.
Chris, just one more time. How much higher are you gonna raise that road?
So based on the plans, we're 14 inches from existing. Now, there's probably areas where you can't raise the road 14 inches, right? We'll have to use some common sense that, you know, based upon, you know, the angulation of the driveway, or, you know, the elevation difference or something like that, you might have to come down with your subbase in some areas. You know, there might be some areas where you might put 1.5 feet just because it's really low to begin with, you know? But I think what John did is it's kind of more like, you know, for budgeting purposes, is the average is like a 10-inch average. You know, so we'll keep an eye on that as we move down the road on that. And there might be some areas we won't have to put as much, you know, so. Now, I guess the other important question, because it always happens as well, is who should we send residents to that live on the road when they have questions? Because usually once they see us out there, there'll be people that will come down and either want to know why this wasn't done or that wasn't done. So where should that be sent to John, or should that be sent to you, or who should we? Because you really don't want us to.
I think we'll
We
probably,
don't really have any.
I think we need to communicate with those people before you start building that road.
Yeah, but he's saying there questions come up during.
Yeah,
the
they
project.
will, but
Yeah.
not as many if we step
Because it
in.
always happens on every project.
Yeah.
There'll be people that maybe, you know, has a bad take on the project, or maybe want something more done, you know, there's always those things.
Well, I can
If
just.
there's easy one person to have them address that question, is usually best, than them to find us on the job, because we really don't.
it's
can't
usually
provide
the
an
town
answer.
admin office, but sometimes it's a select board member, and I think the board can decide that, and then we'll let you know that person's contact info.
Cause it's easier for us to just put our competent person on the job site to have that contact info, so if they have, you know, whoever it is, we can direct them that way.
Well, you're gonna get questions. Once you start raising that road, you're gonna get questions about what's gonna happen to my driveway.
Oh, well, what I
What's
mean
gonna
is,
happen when the
if
water
it has
comes
to
in
do
my
with,
house?
if it has to do with the project itself, we can answer those questions. But there's always lots of other questions, like, I really would like you to do this, or how come we're not doing
Oh.
that, or, you know, the other things.
While you're here.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
who do we direct those to, you know, or the unhappy person that didn't want anything done, or, you know, there's always different things, so, alright. Do you guys have any questions?
Nope, not that needs to be addressed here, I don't think. We're good to go. I'll beat up on John some other time.
There you go. Is that all you have, Chris? You're good?
Yeah, I think we're good, I mean, and it sounds like I'll just get with you and we'll put together what, you know, how we'll pass information.
Yeah.
And get together on whatever that.
My email's
schedule.
right in the. In the last thread setting up this meeting.
Okay.
Patrick it. Or I'll set,
Okay,
we can set it up that way.
it's funny, my PM that will be out here helping out, his name is Patrick, so. it'll be easy.
Well, don't send me his email.
Is that, Chris Patrick?
Patrick White, I think is gonna come out and help out. Can't give you Bobby, he's doesn't work for us anymore.
Oh, no?
He went into work for himself,
Yeah,
so.
I heard that, yeah.
Yeah.
You're good? Questions?
I'm good. I'm
Okay.
good, thank you.
All right, thank you very much, gentlemen, really appreciate it.
Thanks for
Is that a motion to adjourn, Patrick?
Yes, and that is a motion to adjourn. All in favor? Stand
Aye, stand up, or something.
Do something.
Talking about